my name's Neil from Classic Car Holidays, and I'm here today with Sean and Susie from the Cold War Classic Car Owners Club Eastern Bloc. Hi guys, how you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Hi, we're good. How are you?
I'm very well. I was really excited to get back to talk to you guys because we're going to start going into a little bit more depth on some of these topics that we've got spinning around our heads. Today's topic is what's it like? What's the Trabby like as a daily driver? Because it feels like a nice entry into the guts of Trabant world, so to speak. And it felt to me like the right place to get, throw ourselves straight in is, what's a Trabby like to maintain? I know we covered we said a few words about this last time out, but in more depth, how do you keep a Trabby on the road? How easy is it to maintain?
I think they're very easy to maintain. There's not much that can really go wrong with them. It'll either be electrical, as we said before, it could be a fuel problem, but all of the parts are easy to get hold of. But they're simplistic in their design. The East Germans designed them so that they could be worked on at home, because they didn't have garages like we have at the moment. So there's nothing really on there that can't be done yourself. So from a maintenance point of view, very easy.
So when because as you said, this came into being for so that a guy in the street could own it and keep it on the road. So by necessity, it had to be fairly straightforward. So if we think about ourselves today, as long as you've got some kind of mechanical understanding or some kind of, you don't have to have a qualification as a mechanic in order to keep a Trabby on the road. Is that fair to say? Yeah.
Because the thing is, you've got to remember the whole history behind the Trabant, how it came into being. So we're talking about a 10 to 13 year waiting list to own one. You could order the colour that you want, but you didn't necessarily get it. But then once you had it, that you had that car for your family, and it was, a bit like now, if we want anything done to a car, we'll take it to a garage. Well, they just really didn't have that option. So, the Germans were very good at making sure that they had access to all the information that they needed to be able to maintain that car. So it's simplistic in the sense of, as we said before, the engine has 5 moving parts. You can get easy access to the engine, and being a 2-stroke engine, there isn't really that much that can go wrong. So you can sort of identify each particular problem quite easily and get to the root of it. And we've done roadside repairs before now. So Susie owns a Cubal, a forestry one, and quite often not we get a fuel leak tank where there's a bowl which has a filter, and we've stopped many a time and had to repair that. So it's few minutes, you're back on your way again, because there's always something you can identify and get to the bottom of.
So your sort of problem diagnosis is in a Trabby is much more straightforward than it would be in another car, even another car of a similar vintage. But and just to sort of reinforce that point, maybe you can clear this up for me. I think I heard that you got a Trabby for life. So there was no kind of they were never going to replace that Trabby that they allocated to you with a new Trabby. You waited your 10, 15 years, got a Trabby, and that had to last you till the grave. Is that right? Or
Yeah. I mean, towards the end of the Cold War, just before the wall came down, you could go and buy a second-hand Trabant, but we're talking a lot of money to purchase one. The values of them still stayed quite high. But so for example, I'll give you an example. The Cubal wagon that Susie owns, called Otto, that didn't start life as a Cubal wagon. That started life as, I think it was a P70 Trabant. Because there was such a shortage and a long waiting list, it got rebodied as a Cubal wagon twice in its history. The Germans were meticulous. They listed all of the changes and modifications because there was just getting access. Even government vehicles and administration vehicles, they didn't have, they couldn't just go and get them. They had to be repurposed. So you find quite often not a lot of the Trabants have had a lot of modifications, not only done by the owner, but done in the factory. So they have quite interesting histories when you start to scratch the surface.
Right. Actually, I do recognise that. I mean, you know, every Trabby that I've had seen sat in has had, you know, it's all had it's got a button here or a button there or a button under there, and that is sometimes, you know, a previous owner being creative, but also I suspect you know, to keep these things on the road, you've got to get. Well, you've got to do what you've got to do. Now, before we move on, can I just check off with you? Cougar Wagon is, for Cougar Wagon, we should read Jeep or similar to Jeep. Is that right, for those that don't know?
Yes, he's a soft top. So he has a soft roof and soft doors, and you can take them off in the summer. So you just drive him around as a little Jeep in the summer. It's great fun. It's absolutely brilliant. The door when the top's off and the doors are off is just a chain, and you know it's crazy, but it's brilliant.
Right. NASA develop a pen for space costing millions, and the Soviets use a pencil. Right. That's the principle that's being applied here.
Much.
So let's move things on a little bit if we can. Parts. The car stopped production. Finally stopped production in, I think, 1991. It was only ever produced in Eastern Germany. Went a little bit further afield than that, but never to the UK. Must be expensive to seek out bits and bobs for a Trabby.
No, not at all. The only problem you'd ever get with parts is if it's one of the very early Trabants where it's a 6-volt system. But generally, parts for a P601, so the Trabant that we were all familiar with, very easy to get parts. So you have IFA Service Heinz in Germany. He does new parts, new old stock, plus he does second-hand parts, ships them over to the UK without any problems. He'll also service your cars. We've had cars serviced by him in Germany. You've got Trabant Welt, LDM tuning, and new parts being produced in Hungary. So you have access. They're not expensive. And in addition to that, you know, our car club, you know, we've got 1,200 members. If you ever need a part, so I needed a starter motor the other day, put it onto somebody somewhere has got them in the garage, and we've got tons and tons of spares all boxed up, so we're always helping each other out. So access to parts is never an issue.
Right, fantastic. But you do have to be careful, though, I assume, because you don't want to be running these things with day in, day out, unless you've got deep pockets.
No, not at all. Not at all. They're really cheap to run, and they need using on a daily basis. If you think about it, it was used as a daily ride for the East Germans, so we should be doing exactly the same. You don't want it put away in the garage, because that's where you get problems like the brake seizing. The engine needs that mix of fuel and oil. You know, it's not like a normal modern car that has oil in the tank. You don't have that with a 2-stroke engine. It needs using.
Okay, so it's actually a really good idea to give it frequent frequent use, and I'm guessing that you guys use yours as daily drivers pretty much, do you not?
Well, Sean does. I have a long journey to work, so I tend to use a modern car simply because the Trabants are a little bit slower. But Sean uses as a daily driver. He uses Otto in the summer when it's nice and sunny.
Perhaps we should explore that just a little bit, Susie. The current road, driving a Trabby on a modern busy road, is that a pleasurable experience? Is driving a Trabby on a British highway, good fun?
I think unless you go on a motorway, motorways are not fun in a Trabi, I will say that, because we tend to cruise at about 55 miles an hour, and 55 miles an hour on our modern motorways is not good. However, on A and B roads, yeah, it's brilliant. Nippy around town. I mean, Otto's got a little racing crank, so he's like a little whippet round town. And,
right. So I mean, you're happy to go at 55 miles per hour in a two-stroke Trabi. That's super normal for you.
Yeah, absolutely normal.
Well, I'll be absolutely straight with you. I tell my clients don't go above 50. So you clearly have a sort of racing mindset that you know that I probably need to aspire to. So
did I forget to say that was downhill with the following tailwind? I must have missed that. Sorry.
Of course, that always does help. Okay, so driving on a modern road, just a regular road is all fine. No one should be scared or have any concerns or anxiety about that. And I assume, how big is a Trabi? It's a compact car, but how would we compare it to a modern vehicle? What would it, what would it match up to? And I assume, being a compact car, certainly urban driving is a breeze, right?
Yeah, I was going to say it's got to be the size of a Mini, I would say. You know, the new Minis. It's not a big car, and if you put a Trabant next to some of the modern cars, so if you put that next to, I don't know, like an Audi Q2 or a Ford Kuga, it's swamped. I mean, they're tiny. It's not as tiny as an old-fashioned classic Mini, but it's not far off size-wise. They're the saloon especially. It's a small car compared to modern cars for sure.
One of the benefits possibly then is that it must be quite economical, because it's what's its curb weight? 650 kilograms, something like that. 26 horsepower, two-stroke engine. Is it an economical car? Is it an economical car by the standards of the day? And is it how does it stack up to even sort of modern vehicles, would you say?
So the fuel tank holds 24 litres, and we do about 280 kilometres with that.
Yeah, that's before reserve though. So we tend to always fill it up before the reserve, because the thing with the Trabant is you don't have a fuel gauge. So Susie's an expert at doing this, and so I'll let Susie explain how you check the fuel and fuel it up.
Well, you take your dipstick in your hand. No, in the engine, at the back of the engine, there's the fuel tank, and you have like a little dipstick that's about that long that shows you litres. Well, all right, yeah, that's girl size.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about that long. You dip it into the fuel tank, and it tells you how many litres you've got in there. So that's
okay. So again, why go to all the expense and complexity of designing a fuel gauge when a dipstick does a sort of 5-cent dipstick does just as well, right? I guess that's the logic. Okay, so a tank of fuel will take you, did you say 280 odd kilometers plus a little bit, because the Trabi has a switch, a sort of a reserve tank. Well, it's a switch that gives you a bit of the bits at the bottom of the tank. So 280 kilometers there or thereabouts seems pretty reasonable to me for 20 and a bit liters. And certainly, I mean, that surely compares very favourably with cars of similar vintage.
Yeah, I suppose it does, because, so with that 24-litre tank, get about 280 kilometres, and then you have the reserve, which is about another 40 kilometres on top of that. So, I don't know, it's probably 35, 40 miles to the gallon, I suppose, if you worked it out that way. It's probably about normal, I would say. It's comparable to modern cars.
I think that certainly rings true from from my own experience as well. But what about insurance? Because running a classic car. So I think we've already sort of decided that actually running a Trabi as a classic car isn't going to sort of break the bank. It's a fairly cheap classic motoring. How about insurance and tax, though? Because those are the big bills that come in every year that nobody looks forward to. Should people be worried about it with a Trabi?
Well, one of ours is tax exempt, so obviously there is that the older cars you don't have to pay tax on, and even if you do have to pay tax on, it's such a small engine that the tax is minimal. As for insurance, we have a classic car insurance policy that's, I think it's £180 for 5 cars with unlimited mileage. Now, if you're just insuring one Trabi, obviously that's going to be a bit cheaper. Well, a lot cheaper, I suspect, but I don't know exactly.
Yeah, no, there's lots of classic car insurance brokers out there. So we go with quite a well-known classic car insurer. We were quite lucky with ours to get unlimited mileage, which lends to using it as a daily driver. And I actually also, in addition, was able to get to and from work. So there was a great picture that appeared on some of the forums on Facebook of a Wartburg with paramedic on call sign in the window. And they were saying, well, how can that happen? And it's because I had that added to the policy and I was using it for work, the Wartburg, because the boot space was absolutely huge. So, it's like we were saying, they're robust little cars. They're affordable to run and to drive. They're absolutely great fun. And, get it on classic car insurance. It's really, really affordable, much more so than any modern car.
Well, look, guys, we've sort of run out of time a little bit, so we'll have to bring things to a close there. And I would like to say thanks very much for joining me again. Let's see if we can cover another topic on another day. For now, again, if people want to like, subscribe, make comments below, all of that good stuff, then they should feel free to do so. But Susie and Sean, thanks very much for now, and we'll see you again soon. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.